Google found another way into your living room. Verizon announced another family of phones, a trio to be exact. And finally, the industry's worst kept secret lately leaked even more. How you doing, guys? Peter here once again giving you the weekly roundup of things that happened this week. So let's start with Google. Google announced the Chromecast, which is a little 2-inch dongle. Plug into your HDMI port on your TV. You plug the USB power port into the back of it, which then plugs into the wall to give the Chromecast some juice. And from then you just stream content off of your iPhones, iPads, any Android device straight onto your TV. Now it's a devilishly simple little device. You plug it in, you hook it up to Wi-Fi, and that's it. Let's say you're on YouTube and you find a video you want to watch, but you want to watch it on your TV. There's a button on the top now. Well, there will be a button when you get it and it's connected to your Wi-Fi. You press it and it's the cast button and it'll just stream it straight towards your television. So much so actually that even if your television's off, as long as your Wi-Fi's on, which it's perpetually on everywhere, it'll actually turn your TV on and start streaming it for you. And that's pretty cool. I don't know about you, but I think it's really neat. So, number 2, Verizon announced the Droid Ultra family, I guess is what we're going to call it. A new Droid line, a trio. The Droid Max, the Droid Ultra, and the Droid Mini. The Droid Ultra is nothing too great. I mean, none of the phones necessarily are outstanding. The Droid Max claims to have an insane battery life, which is good. That's what the industry needs. That's what consumers have been crying for. I don't know that necessarily jam-packing bigger batteries is going to be the solution, but it's still something for now. I want to say it was a 3,300 milliamp hour battery. I don't think phones are ever going to get much more than 4,000 milliamp hours. I think at that point you need to start doing stuff within the operating system itself to try to increase battery life. It's a step in the right direction, and I applaud Motorola for that. But it's jamming a battery, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. The biggest out of all 3 of those phones, believe it or not, the biggest impact that any of them are going to have is going to be the Droid Mini. Now, why on earth would the Droid Mini matter at all? I mean, these phones are kind of mid-range. Let's be honest here. If you've seen the specs of the Moto X, they're actually really, really similar. Dual-core processors, 720p displays, 10 megapixel camera. Now that's interesting because that's also what the Moto X is supposed to have. That's another interesting bit. We'll talk about that later. But more importantly, the Droid Mini, why does that matter? Well, take a minute and think about the Galaxy S4 Mini. It was a really scaled down version of the S4, so much so that honestly I think it turns people away because it's so underpowered. The HTC One Mini, while it's not as insanely underpowered, it's still underpowered. Now the Droid Mini actually retains almost every single spec that the Droid Ultra and Droid Max have. Now granted, this is where I see the HTC One and the Galaxy S4, and let's say the Droid Max, I think it's probably right around here. But the Galaxy S4 Mini and HTC One Mini are probably down here. So to have the Droid Mini on the same level with them, that's good. Because I don't see why manufacturers see such a necessity of scaling down the specs on the phone. People still want a full experience on a smaller phone. That also kind of ties in with the Moto X leaks we'll talk about in a minute. But no other manufacturer really mainstream has provided consumers a phone that's smaller, because I have the Note 2. It's a 5.5-inch screen, but that doesn't work for everybody. Some people want maybe the size of an iPhone screen, but maybe they don't want the iPhone. There needs to be a variety. That's why Android is increasingly succeeding so much. So for doing that and for actually giving people a experience of a near high-end phone on a smaller screen, I applaud Motorola, because not many manufacturers have done that yet. Why they released them in the first place, I'm not 100% sure. because the last generation not just came out, but recently came out, and I don't know if there's enough to justify buying it over the last generation, which is going to be cheaper. We'll find out once we get a little more information about them. They are using the new X8 computing system, which is an octa-core processing system. Now, that's going to raise a lot of red flags. Technically, it's a dual core. Now, I have the actual specifications for it. You're going to have 2 application processors, as you probably can't even see there, 4 graphics processing cores, 1 contextual computing processing core, and 1 natural language processing core. So this headline actually says octa-core is a misnomer, which is true. It's not really an effective octa-core, but it's something that could be considered an octa-core if you want it to be technical. So what does this mean? Well, let's go back over here. 2 application processing cores. That's where your dual core comes in. Your day-to-day tasks. You're texting, you're checking Facebook, you're doing stuff like that. That's where those 2 cores are going to come in. That's the core of the cores, if you will. Now, 4 graphics processing cores. As you can probably guess, it's going to be gaming. It's going to be playing Angry Birds, Candy Crush, Temple Run, stuff like that. That's where it's going to come in. Maybe even video watching. I'm not 100% sure how that works. Then you have contextual computing processor core. Now you may be wondering, what on earth is that? Well, remember that leaked Rogers video of the Moto X where it's going to be totally hands-free? Bingo. Right there. There's a whole core dedicated to, okay Google, do this for me. That's what it's going to be for. And then of course there's the natural language processing core, which is just for language processing, language input, stuff of that nature. So it's interesting to see that. It's a good step in the right direction. It's great for battery optimization because say you're driving a manual car or any car, if you could be in 3rd gear but you're in 2nd gear, not good for the engine. Vice versa, if you could be in 1st gear and you're in 2nd gear, again, not good for the engine. It doesn't make sense to be running not optimized, which is how most phones are now. They're cores. They'll scale up and down based on what you're doing, but being able to have the individual pieces, it's very convenient. It's like if you were to walk on your hands, your arms aren't made for that. Exactly, your legs are made for that. Which brings us to the topic of the week, of the month lately, yet again, the Moto X. Now, why does this matter? Well, the Droid family has a 10 megapixel camera, suspiciously what the Moto X is supposed to have. Now, this Droid family has a sensor that's supposed to help in low light performance. Coincidentally, also what the Moto X is supposed to have. Interesting. This Droid family has the X8 computing system, what the Moto X is supposed to have. This new Droid family has the contextual awareness to an extent. It has the hands-free, like, okay Google, check the weather for me without even touching your phone. Also what the Moto X is supposed to have. It also even has similar specs. Very similar. Now, I don't know if you're reading on the same page as I am, but it's looking really similar. Now, the reason I say I'm not sure why they even released this Droid family in the first place is because the Moto X is rumored to be ballpark $300. Maybe $300 off contract for the 32 gig model. Maybe $350. We don't know for sure yet. We'll find out Thursday. Now, why would somebody spend $300 on contract for the Droid Max when they can spend a little less, or maybe a little more on the Moto X off contract to get similar specs, not identical, but similar specs, and supposedly an extremely optimized experience? Kind of confusing to me. The verdict is going to come out when the Moto X comes out. When that comes out, I'm going to do a comparison, slamming these phones head to head, because it's a big deal. Because this Droid family is Verizon exclusive. So if you're on Verizon, why would you get Droid Ultra over the Moto X? We're going to have to wait and find out. I can't give you a for sure decision. With that Moto X, there were some more press releases that came out, press renders rather. Actually beautiful. They really kind of show the texture of the phone a little more. And with every day, I'm just like, wow, I want this phone make it happen now. I read more about it. The optimized experience it's supposed to have, it's just supposed to be very fluid. Think about iOS. The specs are kind of mid-range, even low-end even. But the experience is very smooth. Now I know that iOS is you can't do as much with it, and it's optimized for that hardware. There's also less hardware. There's like 3 popular models of iPhones now, 4, 4S, and 5. So I get that there are different hardware limitations. But if we can create a similar experience on Android, that's what the mass public needs to really get Android out there even more so and break into the hearts of those Apple users. I'm not saying that they're evil or anything, but I've given iOS a chance, and I think that iOS users should give Android a chance. I chose Android out of my preference. I'd like to give Windows Phone a chance, but I haven't found something that really wows me aside from the 1020, which I can't get here. So the question of the day is going to be, first, what do you think is better, the new Droid family or the Moto X? And second, are you considering picking up a Moto X? I know last week it was pretty much the topic of discussion, but it's a big deal. If Motorola and Google can do this right, it'll be the phone to have because it's so affordable and still pretty good. It's basically in line with the Galaxy S3 specs, which are good. Even today, there's still nothing to sneeze at. So what do you think? Say tomorrow they announce the Moto X and they say, all right, for 16 gigs, you can have it for $250 or even $300. And for double that memory, for 32, you can have it for $300 or $350 off contract. Now that's probably going to translate to free or at most $100 on contract. That's awesome. Would you buy it? You tell me. That's all for this week though. A couple other things have happened, but these are the main things in my opinion that anybody who's trying to keep up to date with the tech news should know. So let me know if there is anything you would like some more information on. I'm constantly reading different articles and watching videos, and I enjoy it so much, so I just do it in my spare time because I can. Let me know if you have any requests or any sort of questions you have for me, feel free. As always, if you could drop a like for the video, subscribe to my channel, anything like that, I would hugely appreciate it. We're about to hit 150 subscribers, which is small, but we recently hit 100. So we're growing pretty quickly actually. That's a pretty fair pace. Considering I don't even have 50 videos out, the fact that you guys are willing to listen to me go on and you actually value my opinion means a whole lot to me, and I thank you for that. So once again, just thanks. Hit this little button right here if you would, and then hit the subscribe button once you hit my page. Or you can hit that cool new red one down there. I can't thank you enough.